Something that I had to learn throughout my life is that I'm strong, I'm confident, and that I can speak up on certain issues. That I don't have to agree with everything. And I started to notice that this throughout my life about different leaders and just seeing different things where at times we hold back from holding them accountable for their actions. Like we place them on this pedestal, like, hey, they can't do any wrong, or we feel like that our voice is powerless against what they're doing. And I seen that a lot in churches where it might not be necessarily something that negative that is happening, but we let these leaders get by with so much that when something happens, like, oh man, like I can't believe this happened, right? You can't believe this person fell down when they're human like us. And we think we're doing them justice by not addressing the problems, wherein we all need to sharpen each other. Like it says in the Bible, like iron sharpens iron. We need to sharpen each other and we need to hold each other accountable. And we find that in the book of Samuel, First Samuel, where Saul is now chasing David and trying to kill him. And when David was talking to Elimelech, the priest, the high priest, Doeg the Edomite was there. You know, he was just there. He was just like, he wasn't good people at all. You'll find that out soon. And what happened is that Doeg the Edomite went back and told Saul, like, hey, David's over here. You know, like you can come and kill him. Like he's right here, right? He was telling his king that. And David had no knowledge of this, no recollection of this. And David was on his way, still escaping. And Saul went to the priest, the Lord's priest, the high priest, and he ordered his men to kill the priest. And in this moment, Saul did not have the anointing of the Lord. Because previously, when he made different mistakes, Samuel told him that God's presence, the anointing of God is not on him. So he wasn't moving, like God was not moving through him, because he was like, hey, like I'm picking a new king. You're no longer the king. And so Saul was doing all this by himself. God has not instructed him to go kill David. And so Saul is angry. His temper is flaring, and he tells these men to kill the priest. And the man, they're not the king. They even know, it's like, hey man, we shouldn't be doing this. Like, we're not gonna do this. So they allowed Doeg, I believe it was like 85 of them. They allowed Doeg to kill all of these priests except for one. Ahimelech's son escaped, and that always happens. That one escapes, and then they tell the other person that's running or that's fighting, and that's like the upper hand. And in that moment, Saul's men were cowards because they didn't stand up and hold Saul accountable. Like, they did not need to follow Saul. They could have killed him if they wanted to. Yes, he's the Lord's anointed, and David always says that, like, man, I'm about to lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. But in this moment, like, I don't know if they had that inside them, like, oh man, we can't touch him. But they could have killed Doeg. They could have, and then to the side, like, hey Saul, like, no, we're not doing this. And I feel that God he would have gave them a victory in that moment, even if they didn't kill Saul. Like, if they just held him in check, but they didn't do that. And these priests lost their lives, and in Saul's bodyguards, I don't want to say cowards, but it is. They stood to the side as they witnessed this. And more so, when Saul, after Jonathan did that great thing of leading the army to victory, him and his armor bearer. After that, Saul took a vow, made the whole army not eat until until later in the day. I don't know if it's sunset or I think it was like sunset. It was later in the day, And Jonathan didn't hear anything of it. He was just out there. He was eating some honeycomb. And one of the men was like, hey, like, you didn't hear what your dad said? He was like, no, like, man, that sounds crazy. And they started to cast lots and see who was guilty. And Saul was like, man, even if it's my son Jonathan, I'm gonna kill him. And it was crazy because after all that happened, in this moment, it shows how they stood up to the king. Even though like he was a leader, they stood up in this moment because they saved Jonathan. He was like, man, like, we're not gonna let you kill him. Like, like he ate this food, but like he didn't do anything wrong. He led us to victory. And then after that, they began to be cowards. And you see that throughout the Bible in different moments, and then you see that in our own lives. So as we are listening to the leaders, yes, we are supposed to listen to them and respect them, but at the same time, we're supposed to help them and, help them how they're posturing their leadership. And leadership, it doesn't have to be something negative, right? It can be something like their vision, and we're like, hey, like, what about this? What about that? Like, trying to help them tweak things, and when we're actually involved in it, then we grow more as as individuals and as a community, and we can't just like be to the sideline voiceless, and we can't allow ourselves to put them so high up that we cannot do constructive criticism. Because criticism is not always bad, but when we view it as like, hey, this person is up here where God's supposed to be, and we're saying like, hey, like, man, like that was good, like, everything was good. Like, no, like, some things are not good. Like, point it out, tear it up, speak up to it, address the structure. Because if you don't address the structure, your foundation's gonna fall apart. You know what I mean? Like, hey, so if the walls are saying, like, are not speaking to the house, it's like, hey, man, like, we just chill here. You know what I'm saying? I see that crack right there, but we just gonna chill. After a while, the house is gonna fall and the walls gonna be like, man, like, what happened? Like, what happened? You were supposed to hold us up. Like, even if you might be the smallest person, but you're that being for that house, you're supposed to hold us up. And even though you said, like, hey, I'm not the leader, I'm not doing it, like, no, you're a leader. You control what you want to step into. You control what you want to step into. You can either step into, the ways of the world and like, hey, man, I'm going to go over here, kick it, party and all of this. It's like, it's easy to speak there, but why can't you speak at the church? I mean, it's not really that, like, yeah, it's judgment. It's like, it's the world. It's judgment still, but like, that's supposed to be the place that you feel most comfortable. You can speak outside of home, but you can't speak in home to your family. That's an issue right there that we need to address. So join me next Friday, same time, same place, 7 o'clock. It's your boy, MJH Motivates. Peace.